in honor of Lord Nrsingadev's appearance coming up very soon. The classes will be dedicated to Lord Nrsingadev. I spent some time this morning trying to modify the presentation so that they will a little bit more closely match the audience, meaning Sunday audience, new people. That was my attention, and some newer people this evening, etc., along with everybody else. We'll begin discussing Canto 7, Chapter 9. This is Prahlad's prayers to Lord Nrsingadev, so that's happened already. A lot of excitement. Lord Nrsingadev burst out of a pillar and had some fun with Hiranyakashipu and then finished him. And as you know, the whole section, large section, where one demigod after the next demigod after the next demigod came before Lord Nrsingadev to pacify Lord Nrsingadev. You can learn a lot about each of the demigods and their relationship with Lord Vishnu by reading their prayers. It says something about themselves and their perspective on Lord Vishnu, their regard for him, their mode of service to him. But to no avail, meaning he was still very angry. And so chapter 9 begins with another attempt. That's Prahlad. So that's where we're going. Canto 7, Chapter 9. The whole chapter is for 55 verses. We're obviously not going to cover 55 verses. But the first few verses and a little introduction to them. Starting with offering our respects to our founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada, who has given us Srimad Bhagavatam, at least for myself, for many of us probably. We wouldn't know much about Lord Nrsingadev. Maybe some of you would know a lot about Lord Nrsingadev, but nothing. And so he not only gave the story, but very detailed, easily understood Bhaktivedanta purports to guide us through the appearance of the personality of Godhead and its different features. In this case, Lord Nrsingadev. Here's some photographs of the deity of Tota Gopinath. Tota means garden, and Gopinath is the deity that Gadadhar Pandit worshipped for the entire duration of time that Gadadhar Pandit resided in Jagannath Puri. Gadadhar Pandit was nearly the same age, almost the same age, as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And when Mahaprabhu, by taking sannyas, decided to go to Puri, so also did Gadadhar Pandit go to Puri. Mahaprabhu gave him a remote residence, a little bit away from everything, in a garden area. Tota means garden area. And the deity of Gopinath was the deity that he worshipped. It is said, as you see that the deity form below, there's two lotus feet, but actually the deity is sitting. During a certain part of the year, they add these 2 feet, but he's sitting because Gadadhar couldn't reach him So he sat down so he could reach him and decorate him nicely. And otherwise, at the upper photo, you don't see his feet because he's seated. And every day, Mahaprabhu would come to see Gadadhar Pandit and see Gopinath, and in ecstasy sing and dance before Gopinath every day. And after singing and dancing before Gopinath, he would hear Gadadhar Pandit recite Srimad Bhagavatam. Those two things. Gadadhar Pandit was especially known for, gifted in worship of Gopinath and reciting Srimad Bhagavatam. So much so that the king of Orissa, named Prataparudra, pictured here, the one that's paying obeisances before all the sadhus, had this painting commissioned by a local artist to commemorate his submission to Lord Chaitanya and his associates. Seated beneath this tree, that's Gadadhar Pandit reciting Srimad Bhagavatam. And to his left, there's Mahaprabhu with a shaved head. And behind him is Advaita Acharya with long white hair. And looks like long white hair, but maybe it's just not long white hair. And Lord Nityananda on the other side. And that's Haridas Thakur standing. If you look closely, you can see there's the names of each of the personalities written in Bengali. In case you don't read Bengali, here's what they say. Haridas is standing, hanging some clothes. Just below him, Swarup Damodar and Vasudev Sarvabhauma, or Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. Seated behind Gadadhar Pandit, going from one side, from the foreground to the background, Jagadananda Pandit, Raghunath Das Goswami, Srivas Thakur, and yeah, those are the persons who, at least every day, Mahaprabhu would come to hear, and sometimes they would all come together and hear. Chaitanya Bhagavat says that Mahaprabhu was particularly fond of hearing the story of Prahlad and the story of Dhruva. And after hearing those stories, sometimes when people hear the story, you have a new one, and his response was, say it again, say it again, say it again. And so, very happily, Gadadhar Pandit recited the story that we're going to hear. We've also heard it, likely multiple times. The main personality for whom Lord Nrsimhadev appeared was Prahlad. At a time when Prahlad was just a young boy, just the beginning of school age, 5 years, 6 years of age. And at the beginning of this section, Prabhupada writes in chapter 6 of Canto 7, this is the Prahlad deity in Mayapur, on Chandan Yatra. By accepting the lotus feet of Prahlad Maharaj, who is in the Parampara succession, one will be able to understand the mode of spiritual life. Interesting phrase. One will be able to understand the mode of spiritual life. In accepting this mode of activity, there is no need for material qualifications. So that's from Prabhupada's introduction to chapter 6, and we're going to chapter 9. But it's nice to know how valuable is Prahlad Maharaj no material qualification, yet he had great spiritual qualification. Prahlad Maharaj was one of the 12 Mahajans. Oh, I wanted to say something from yesterday's class. Some of you maybe remember from yesterday's class, there was one question that was asked by Sri Vrindavan. What do we know about King Janak that earned him or entitled him to be considered one of the 12 Mahajans? What's the history? Something like that. So it was pretty easy to find. He was known as virtuous king. He was known as a great warrior king, but he was also known as the Mahajans were especially gifted as being bearers of conclusive truths of transcendental life. So his history in this regard was, during his time, the sage Ashtavakra was residing in his kingdom. Ashta means 8. Vakra means bent. So it's a sage that was bent, or his body was distorted in 8 different directions. So the history goes, one time there was a discussion invited by the king. Kings would do this from time to time on a spiritual topic. And different sages were invited to come and address themselves to this particular chosen topic. And some said this, and some said that, and some said the other thing, and said something else. And Ashtavakra happened to be in the audience. And Ashtavakra patiently sat through, this one said, that one said, and finally he stood up and said, no, none of this. And then he spoke very concisely and very eloquently the conclusive truths about the particular topic. And everyone accepted, because he was of such a learned personality and so deep and so spiritually powerful that persons just accepted his conclusions. Normally, great sages, they like to argue and debate and hold their position and things like that. But Ashtavakra was so elevated that they just yielded. And because of his strong desire to understand more deeply, King Janak went to find Ashtavakra. And he searched, and he searched, and he searched, and he searched, and he went deep into the... He went with some horses and some soldiers, and, in a really earnest search to find Ashtavakra. In course of time, he got separated from his little army, band of soldiers, and he was just on his own horseback and deep into the jungle. And lo and behold, there was Ashtavakra seated in a solitary place. And so he was very jubilant. And as he was getting off his horse with one leg in the stirrup and the other leg up in the air, Ashtavakra said, "Stop." So with his leg still up in the air, getting off the horse, he stopped. He was being tested by Ashtavakra whether he would be obedient. And you hold that position, and I'll give you spiritual instruction. And he gave spiritual instruction, and was impressed with the earnestness and submissiveness of King Janak, because he really wanted to know. He didn't stay in that position indefinitely, and then in course of time, Ashtavakra accepted him as a student and instructed him thoroughly. And after some time, being instructed by Ashtavakra thoroughly, he returned to his kingdom, to his palace, and a second sage named Yajnavalkya also made his presence in the king's kingdom, and eager to learn more and eager to learn more. So Yajnavalkya also became an important instructing personality in King Janak's life. And hearing from King Janak about Ashtavakra, both Ashtavakra and King Janak went and submitted themselves for further instruction from Ashtavakra. So in this way, he became filled with realized knowledge, and he imbibed it, he lived it, and that's the way that he ruled his kingdom, and that's the understanding that I could find, at least, how he became qualified to be one of the 12 Mahajans. Mainly these two people, or great sages, Ashtavakra and Yajnavalkya. And there was another question that I said I would research, and I came up with the answer. The other question was a critical edition of Ramayana. The answer is yes. As with Mahabharata, it took some number of years. So the Oriental Institute in Baroda, in Gujarat, invested about the same number, 20, 25 years, with a team of scholars going through editions and critical editions and sifting, and came up with a version in Gujarati of a critical edition of Ramayana. And Princeton Press engaged two scholars to make a Gujarati to English version. So that's available. Princeton Press has a English version, and it's not the old English difficult to chew. It's a readable version, more or less. Not as modern as we would like, but there's a critical edition of Ramayana, as there is with Mahabharata. And I sent him a link that gives the history of how that was done. The critical edition of Ramayana, that so many years of sifting and the procedures they followed. Because scholars like to question things, you know? Did they do this? Did they do that? Did they do it right? What about this? So it's all included. And if someone's interested, maybe Leelananda's interested, he now has that link. If you're interested, he'll supply you the link. You can look. So back to Prahlad. He was one of the 12 Mahajans. We understand about him that in Gaura Leela he appears as Haridas Thakur. And this was declared by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu during the Mahaprakash Leela. You know what is the Mahaprakash Leela? Mahaprakash Leela is a pastime during Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's stay in Navadvip, where he had become an initiated disciple of Ishwara Puri. That took place prior. He went to Gaya and received Diksha, and then came back and was a transformed personality, a full-on Vaishnava instead of just a scholar. So in the course of his devotee pastimes, it began, one of the things that became a daily affair, an evening affair, was kirtan at the house of Srivas Pandit. The house of Srivas Pandit sounds kind of, what's the house of Srivas Pandit? It just was, in Bengal, they have boundary walls around property, and he had 5 brothers, or there were 5 brothers, there were 4 or 5 brothers total, and they had their extended family living all together. And one part of that compound is where the place of worship was, a kirtan hall, and where the deities go on the altar. So one evening when they were having Naga Sankirtan at the house of Srivas, Lord Chaitanya suddenly entered into a mood of being the Supreme Lord. And he went and sat on the altar. And they began giving instructions as the Supreme Lord, worship me. And so forth and so on. And then one by one, he invited persons to come forward and revealed truths about them that nobody other than the Supreme Lord would know. It's a long section in Chaitanya Charitamrita, in Chaitanya Bhagavat also. So when it came to Haridas Thakur, he revealed to Haridas Thakur that previously he was Prahlad Maharaj. About him it's described, in part because he was constantly engaged in chanting these 4 principles found in Shikshastika 3. It said they are modeled perfectly by Prahlad Maharaj. Naturally so. And there's a phrase that has to do with Prahlad Maharaj's unwillingness to achieve some gift from Lord Nrsingadev without the people who are suffering in this world receiving the same benediction. He didn't want for himself, he wanted para, dukkha dukhi. He was feeling distress because of the unhappiness of the people of this world that don't have Krishna consciousness. So that's a phrase that Prabhupada used often. Para, dukkha dukhi. Para, dukkha dukhi. Krimpam buddhi. He's the ocean of mercy. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as well, but Prahlad Maharaj is being characterized in this way in particular. And the phrase, it's found in Adi Lila chapter 5, writing of Raghunath Das Goswami, where he's describing Sanatana Goswami in one set of prayers. So that's Prahlad. Paradukha, dukhi. His distress, his dukkha, is the distress of others. Unnecessarily dealing with misfortune in this world. A little bit more background and then we'll go forward with his prayers. Lord Nrsingadev appeared because of the harassment of Hiranyakashipu, and Prabhupada writes that Prahlad's Nrsingadev grants the power to destroy all obstacles on the path of devotional service. Isn't that nice? If you find some obstacles on your path of devotional service, you know what to do. Go to Lord Nrsingadev, help. There's some obstacles, formidable obstacles. The specific verse that refers to this is from Brahma Samhita. Let's say the verse together. Yat pada pallava yugam vidadaya kumbha dvandve pranama samaye saganadi raja vighan vahantam anabasya jagatrayasya govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami. So I put in big red letters, kumbha, dvandve. So dvandve is easy, that's 2. What's kumbha? What does kumbha mean? Kumbha means pot. Kumbha means pot. So on there are bumps or protrusions on the head of an elephant, 2 of them, one on each side. So the kumbha dvandve are those protrusions, those bumps on the head of the elephant. I adore the primeval Lord Govinda, whose lotus feet are always held by Ganesh upon the pair of tumuli, that's Bhaktisiddhanta's language, that's kumbha dvandve, protruding from his elephant head, in order to obtain power for his function of destroying all obstacles on the path of progress of the 3 worlds. So, what's being said here is, Ganesh is also an elephant, right? Ganesh is an elephant. Yes, Ganesh is an elephant. And he has some protrusions on his head. So the protrusions on Ganesha's head are giving power to overcome obstacles in the path of progress. Because those who are worshippers of Ganesh, generally, they worship Ganesh to remove obstacles, to achieve something. In Karma Kanda rituals, Ganesh is an essential personality to be propitiated because I want X, and I approach Ganesh to help remove the obstacles for achieving X. So those protrusions on the elephant head of Ganesh are where Lord Nrsingadev places his feet. And that's where he gets the power to give benedictions. Isn't that nice? There's the elephant, and there's the protrusions on the top of his head. And there's Ganesh, who's getting the power to do what he does because of the mercy of Lord Nrsingadev, who places his feet on the 2 tumuli, or dvandva kumbhas, on his head. So there's Lord Nrsingadev having his battle with Hiranyakashipu. Here's a statement from Laghu Bhagavatamrita. He appeared before the churning of the milk ocean in the reign of the 6th or Chakshusha Manu. He appeared before the appearance of Lord Kurma. He displays abundant power, Lord Nrsingadev. He gives joy to Prahlad. He destroys ignorance of the devotee. He is effulgent like the autumn moon. He possesses the head of a lion. In his mouth resides all eloquence, in whose chest resides Lakshmi, in whose heart resides knowledge. All this is found in Laghu Bhagavatamrita. Because what's Laghu Bhagavatamrita? Laghu Bhagavatamrita is a book dedicated to one thing. And it's describing the forms of the Lord that appear in this world, or avatars. So you get a lot of understanding and details and newer details about the forms of the Lord appearing in this world and their features. So this is what is described there about Lord Nrsingadev. In whose heart resides knowledge. This is from Bhavarta Deepika. Bhavarta Deepika is commentary by Sridhar Swami, describing Lord Nrsingadev. There he is, appearing from a pillar. Maybe some of you have been to the temple in San Francisco. Anyone been to the temple in San Francisco? The Jagannath deities in San Francisco. Along the wall, they have, this is a photograph of what they have along the wall. It's Lord Nrsingadev appearing from pillar. When he appeared, his hair shook the clouds. His glaring eyes stole the effulgence of the luminaries in the sky. His breathing agitated the seas and oceans. His roaring caused elephants to cry in fear. Must have been really loud. Airplanes were thrown into outer space and upper planetary system. Earth appeared to slip from its position by the pressure of his lotus feet. Hills and mountains sprang up by his intolerable force. This is all from Laghu Bhagavatamrita. Though ferocious, he is as cool as the moon for his devotees. This is this Bhavarti Dipika commentary of Sridhar Swami. Although very ferocious, the lioness is very kind to her cubs. Similarly, although very ferocious to non-devotees like Hiranyakashipu, Lord Nrsimhadev is very, very soft and kind to devotees like Prahlad Maharaj. So become like Prahlad Maharaj and you be protected. So that's a little preliminary before just 2 verses this morning from Canto 7, Chapter 9, Text 1. Here's the Sanskrit for the verse. Lord Nrsimhadev was Manu Samrambham. Samrambham. Extremely angry. Samrambham. Extremely angry. The great Saint Nard continued. The demigods headed by Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, and other great demigods dared not come forward before the Lord, who at that time was Manu Samrambham. He was very angry. Okay. Showing his claws and roaring and Sheshanag around his head, and because he had just finished Hiranyakashipu and he was still in the mood of being just very angry at what Hiranyakashipu had done and was planning to do further to Prahlad. So here's a nice description. Being checked by them, this is how Hiranyakashipu came to this world. Being checked by them, the sages, the 4 Kumaras, pictured on the right side, cursed Giant Vijay. Being agitated by the material qualities of passion and ignorance, you are unfit to live in the shelter of Madhudvisa's lotus feet. There's this word dvisha again. Madhu dvisha. What does dvisha mean? Who knows? Dvisha. Dvesha. Dvisha. Envy. So those who are envious of Madhu Dvisa's lotus feet, which are free from such modes, it would be better if you go immediately to the material world and take your birth in a family of most sinful asuras. So is it possible for envy to exist in this condition? Madhu's a big demon. Madhu, who's Madhu and Kaitaba? You know who's Madhu and Kaitaba? Right after Lord Brahma manifested the Vedas, 2 demons, this is the very, very beginning of creation. There wasn't even, creation, just very beginning stage, and the Vedas had become manifested. 2 demons came along and wanted to steal the Vedas from Brahma. Brahma called for help. Lord Vishnu came immediately and chopped them. Madhu and Kaitaba were finished because they were going to steal the Vedas and use it in a nefarious way. So Madhu Sudana, but one who is envious of Madhu is Madhu Dvisha. So is it possible for Krishna to be envious of someone? He's Madhu Dvisha. Prabhupada's answer is yes, Krishna can be envious also. Madhu was such a great demon that Krishna didn't want him to steal the Vedas, so Krishna finished him. So in that sense, not envy like the material kind of envy. One sees somebody is great and they want to chop them down, so they're envious. Not that. It's a transcendental emotion to check the movement of Madhu. Anything is possible for Krishna, any emotion in its perfect form. So here's going a little bit further. Can devotees have dvisha? Well, dvisha in terms of anger, this is the explanation that Prabhupada gives in this regard. This is Krishna carrying the chariot wheel of Arjuna ready to smash Bhishma Dev in a mood of anger. So the Lord can be very angry in order to give protection to the devotee. But it's not the material kind of anger or enviousness in the material sense. In other words, there is such a thing as transcendental anger. As the Supreme Personality of Godhead did when Durvasa Muni was giving trouble to... Who was he giving trouble to? Ambarish. So these bad habits, Kam, Krodh, Kama means lust, Krodha means anger. So if they are coming from God, then how can we neglect it? How can we reject it? So there is no need of rejecting. That is the Narottam Das Thakur's. You cannot reject. That is not possible. You are a living being. There must be Kama, Krodha, Lobha, Moha, Matsarya. You cannot reject it. You cannot make it zero. That is impersonalism. But it has its proper use. That you have to know. Unless you know the proper use of everything, proper use means it must be used for Krishna. Then it is proper use. Otherwise, it is misused. There's a nice teaching given by Narottam Das Thakur where he also speaks of this point. It's a little delicate or transcendental or not easy, so easy to understand. It's easy to just like whitewash the thing over and you don't get angry. And that, in many cases, that's a safer position to take. But it has its place, like Hanuman became angry, or, persons may become angry. Krishna became angry. When Ambarish was in difficulty, he was angry. Krodha Bhakta Dveshi Jane. That's Narottam Das Thakur's explanation. When there's Bhakta Dveshi targeted towards a devotee, then anger has its place. Hare Krishna. Anger has its place. It shouldn't be uncontrolled anger, but, it has its place. Again, as Hanuman did, to make a display of power, to give a warning to Ravana, and the personalities in Lanka. He became very angry. And then there's other examples of anger exhibited by Arjuna. Even when Krishna ordered him to let Karna have it, he let Karna have it. Krishna has his way of doing things. Okay, so here's the next verse, and that's it for this morning. In bold letters, we see this term Sankita. Shankita means because of fear. The goddess of fortune, Lakshmi Ji, was requested to go before the Lord by all the demigods present, but because of fear, she could not do so. But even she had never seen such a wonderful, extraordinary form of the Lord, and thus she could not approach him. Now, Prabhupada spent some time explaining she had never seen such a wonderful, extraordinary form of the Lord. So the form of Lord Nrsingadev is a form that's found in the spiritual sky, in Vaikuntha form, Vaikuntha realm. It's not only here when Hiranyakashipu does the Hiranyakashipu. It's an eternal form of the Lord. And the commentary also says, in previous yuga cycles, she had seen this form even in this world. So why is it saying here that she had never seen such a wonderful form before? Because it's the influence of Yogamaya, and by the influence of Yogamaya, even Goddess Lakshmi was bewildered, seeing this form. So she's always serving the Supreme Lord. She's always, from the Supreme Lord comes so many unlimited forms. Advaitam Achyutam Anadim Anantarupam. And inspired by, this is now Prabhupada's purport, inspired by Leela Shakti. Inspired by Leela Shakti, she could not appreciate this form. Now this is directly in the BBT purport, and most of us, I'll say, I'm used to hearing, until I began reading a little bit more, I'm used to hearing just Yogamaya instead of Leela Shakti. By the influence of Yogamaya, such and such. You with me? So what's the relationship between Leela Shakti and Yogamaya? Is that a good question? Are they related at all? The painting is showing Krishna is the fountainhead of all incarnations. Down below are many, like waterfalls, flowing and flowing and flowing in so many incarnations you can't count them all. So Leela Shakti, it's a detail, but it's a nice, I like this kind of detail. Leela Shakti is one of the aspects of the Lord's Svarup Shakti. Now we have another term. There's Yogamaya, there's Leela Shakti, and there's Svarup Shakti. So what's Svarup Shakti? Swarupa Shakti. It's his own potency. Swarup Shakti. Swarupa Shakti. The Lord's own potency. And so an aspect of his own potency is Yogamaya. Sometimes Yogamaya and Swarup Shakti are used interchangeably, but more specifically, Yogamaya is a subset of his spiritual potency or Swarup Shakti. And similarly, Leela Shakti is a subset of his Swarup Shakti. So Swarup Shakti is this big umbrella terminology that means everything that's his own internal spiritual potency. Kind of equivalent, Antaranga Shakti, his internal potency, Swarup Shakti, those are all exchangeable equivalents. And then there's subsets of those. Just like in Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan. In Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan, who's Yogamaya? There's personified. Yogamaya personified is, starts with a P. Purnamasi. Purnamasi. I'll ask you. Who is Purnamasi? You don't know? We just said. You weren't paying attention. Ah. You were paying attention. I just terrified you by asking you. Purnamasi is Yogamaya. Yogamaya is Purnamasi. The medium through whom, the person through whom Krishna arranges his pastimes, notice the word pastimes, the person through whom Krishna arranges his pastimes is Yogamaya, or Purnamasi, in Vrindavan. Okay, that's very nice. Now what's Leela Shakti? What's Leela Shakti? It's a little delicate. We could just take the big banner again and say, there's Swarup Shakti, or Krishna's Antaranga Shakti, or his internal potency, one feature of which is his Yogamaya potency. And then there's Leela Shakti, and even more specifically, it's not exactly that Leela Shakti is a subset of Yogamaya. She's a separate entity, and she carries out the wishes of Purnamasi. So, but she has her own personality and her own function. They make a good team, but they're not identical. So it's a function of the Lord's internal potency, or his Swarup Shakti, and through so that's what is being said here. This is in Prabhupada's purport. Lakshmi Devi, the goddess of fortune, being inspired by Leela Shakti, could not appreciate this unprecedented form of the Lord. To enhance the pastime of Lord Nrsingadev, Leela Shakti, a potency of the Supreme Lord, inspired the goddess of fortune, Lakshmi, to not recognize this form. Although she certainly had recognized the form. She's his eternal consort. She knows all his forms. But Leela Shakti influenced her to not be able to appreciate and to be fearful, and thus reluctant to go forward and try to pacify her Lord and Master. Prabhupada writes further, in other words, for the common men, the form of the Lord as Nrsingadev is certainly unseen and wonderful. But for a devotee like Prahlada Maharaj, such a fearsome form of the Lord is not at all extraordinary. By the grace of the Lord, a devotee can very easily understand how the Lord can appear in any form he likes. Therefore, the devotee is never afraid of such a form, because of special favor bestowed upon Prahlada Maharaj. He remains silent and unafraid. Even though all the demigods, including even Lakshmi Devi, were afraid. So this is again Leela Shakti, the special mercy or special favor bestowed upon Prahlada Maharaj. It doesn't say Leela Shakti made this arrangement. One can say because he, Prahlad, was instructed thoroughly by Narada Muni, and that connection with Narada Muni was there and secure and vibrant, he was not afraid. You could say it either way. Special favor. Others are afraid, he's not afraid. The goddess of fortune is afraid, Demigods are afraid. Prahlad's not afraid. He's special. He's a recipient of special mercy. Here's what Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur writes about this. Again, it's the same verse and the purport. In the 9th chapter, Prahlad, ordered by Brahma, approaches the Lord and offers prayers so that the Devatas can approach him. What to speak of others, even Lakshmi could not calm Nrsimha. Prahlad, however, understood that Nrsimhadev was the embodiment of affection. Doesn't look like affection. But the affection was for the devotees and the was for the demons. And he knew that discernment power was there with him by the good fortune of Narada's association. Though she had seen Nrsimhadev in the previous kalpa, and though Nrsimhadev is always present in Vaikuntha, the impression of not having previously seen or heard about this form was produced by the Leela Shakti. There we go again. What is it? This guy? Oh. Very pleasant sounding. Okay. No, it's going to do some more. Okay, I'll just keep going. In order to make everyone taste Adbhuta Rasa, the mood of astonishment. So, Leela Shakti is being deployed by the personality of Godhead's internal or spiritual potencies to achieve something, or achieve many things, but one of the things it was to achieve was stimulating a particular secondary rasa. Secondary rasas, what are they? You want to volunteer an answer? Secondary rasas are what? You get not just a list, but what are they? What are the secondary rasas? What function do they have? Huh? It has the primary rasa. Yes? Secondary rasas are meant to enhance the primary rasa. So the primary rasas don't disappear. However, when the secondary rasa takes action or becomes manifest prominently, the primary rasa appears to be covered. It's not zero. It's just less prominent, and the secondary rasa becomes more prominent and seems to eclipse the primary rasa. So when one is feeling astonishment, what do? And that's what was going on. By Leela Shakti, all but Prahlad were, and that ecstatic emotion, the astonishment mood, was to enrich the primary rasa. And by the Lord's arrangement, that astonishment mood became withdrawn and subsided, and the primary rasa was restored. But now they just had the enrichment or the enhancement of their primary rasa by the appearance of the secondary rasa, all by the arrangements of Leela Shakti. Isn't that nice? And the Lord doesn't have to do anything. He doesn't have to keep score or keep a record book or something like that. He just, his energies move according to his desire for his devotees with pleasure. And the spotlight is going to remain on Prahlad because he's now being pushed forward particularly by Lord Brahma. So that's the end of this presentation. Whoops. Go back to the full screen. I thought there was going to be another picture of Lord Nrsingadev, but it went away. So we've begun so far. A little background on who is Lord Nrsingadev, who is Prahlad Maharaj, and the prayers of Prahlad Maharaj. In the manner of offering prayers, Prahlad is offering glorification. So one of the ways that we can, in anticipation of the appearance day of Lord Nrsingadev, I don't know how many of you are going over this section of the Bhagavatam ahead of time, but maybe by doing it this way, you will. It's prayers, but it's glorification, or glorification is prayers. And these Prahlad's glorification, Prahlad's prayers is glorification. It's establishing his humble position before these exalted demigods. I mean, he's a little boy, and they're these, creators and founders of the universe. And he's born in a demoniac family, and they're exalted personalities. So he's expressing himself in very humble ways. But because they've ordered me to do this, I can't say no. So I'm coming before you, Lord Nrsingadev, on their order to do so. But I know, although I'm low-born and disqualified in so many ways, you don't look at that. You just will accept whatever offerings I make to you, and therefore I'm ready to go forward. It's instructive about a mood for offering prayers. Commonly, not always, but commonly, prayers begin with expressions of humility. Because naturally, the person to whom you're offering a prayer, you're coming before them in a humble mood. And explicit acknowledgement of your humble position before the person whom you're offering prayers to is suitable. It's not a mandatory, but it's very common and very suitable. So that's how Prahlad's prayers begin. And we'll see how far we get before Lord Nrsingadev appears Wednesday or whenever it is. Let's see if there's some discussion. Yes?
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. Something that really struck me is this sentence that's highlighted. Prahlad, however, understood that Narasimha was the embodiment of affection, and that was by Narada's mercy. And it kind of reminded me of this Bhagavad Gita 5:16 verse where Krishna says that when one is enlightened by this knowledge, all the nations is destroyed, and one can, everything lights up. And I remember in that commentary, one of the acharyas say that what is that knowledge that lights up everything? Is that the knowledge by which one understands that Krishna is always fair and kind to his devotees. And I was thinking a lot of struggle in a devotee's life is because one is not able to see Krishna's kindness, Krishna's affection, Krishna's mercy in the varied situations in one's life. And but although we may theoretically know it, one is not able to always tangibly appreciate that Krishna's affection in this difficulty or whatever it is, because Krishna is always only benedicting his devotees. He doesn't wish anything else but benediction for his devotees. So I'm just, I guess I want to hear more on the topic, and particularly what is something we can do to attract that kind of mercy such that this vision becomes more, I guess, operational in one's life.
I'm thinking like 16 different thoughts as you were speaking. I like that painting of Prabhupada up on the wall here. It's very nice. If you take a close look, before you leave, take a close look. It's a nice painting of Prabhupada. Purity is the force, is one thought. Without purity, the question that you raised isn't going to happen. And so what's the price for purity? And the price for purity is to be able to be willing and able to say yes to Krishna. Even if we don't understand, why something is happening. Just the fundamental acknowledgement that Krishna is kind. Although I'm not understanding the kindness, I may not be understanding the kindness at this moment. And your question was how to get closer to that position where we can see that behind everything is Krishna's kindness. That's how do we get there? So it's purity. I just want to share something because it was also one of the 16 things that was moving as I was listening to your question. I shared this in Orlando, but on the flight to Fort Lauderdale from wherever I was coming from, I think it was Chicago to Fort Lauderdale. It was a United Airlines flight, and the flight was packed, and the person that I sat, I was on an aisle seat. There was a person next to me that was in the middle seat, and then there was a window seat. And I kind of got a heads up when the person that was sitting in the middle seat got 3 of those sterilizer things from the plane and wiped everything down and wiped everything down and wiped everything down and wiped everything down. It took like 5 minutes to wipe everything down. Now this is a fastidious guy. And a little bit of detail, but 3 times during the flight, he scolded me severely. I mean, it wasn't mild, it was severe. He didn't dwell on it, he just blasted me 3 times. One time was, I started to come down with some sniffles, and it was, only one time there was a cough, and I took my cloth and covered my mouth with a cloth when I coughed. And he raised his voice and said, I forget exactly what he said, but you have to cough that way. And I said, sir, I covered my mouth with my cloth. And he immediately snapped back. Doesn't matter. When you cough, 100 miles an hour, spray is coming out of your mouth, and you can cover your mouth, but it doesn't stop the spray from coming out of your mouth. Cough that way. Tone. So I didn't cough the rest of the way. My nervous system shut down. And then I had to get something out of my bag. So I leaned over to get something out of my bag that was on the floor by my feet. And he barked at me again, scolded me severely. It's very annoying. You stop that. I said, sir, I just had to lean over to get something from my bag. He said, but you don't have to rub me and bump me and do like that. Stop it. And then went one more time without, the what it was. But my response the third time was, I'm an imperfect being. What can I do? I'm not trying to cause you trouble. He said, I know. Stop it. So I didn't get rattled. I just was thinking, now back to her question, I was thinking, Krishna's mercy is here somehow. And that, because I wasn't addled, I wasn't like defending myself or trying to understand how's Krishna's mercy working in all of this. And I got the answer in two things in the following way. I probably do this with other people that aren't like as, irritatable as this other individual. They just don't say it. And it's not nice. I'm getting harsh scolding because I may very well be doing the same thing to other people. I don't even know it because the person isn't barking at me. And I don't want to do that. So, at the end, I turned to the man and said, thank you. And he just went, And like kind of an emotionless, anyway. And then in Fort Lauderdale, there was a father with his son on his lap, and the son wanted to sit right in front and was coughing as like broadcasting his whatever it is when you cough all over the place. And so I stopped and said, I don't think it's a good idea that you sit here like this and cough, have your son cough. He should go someplace where he can cough freely without contaminating somebody. I didn't have to say it in a snappy way with this other person, but it was a good lesson. Because I don't... That's just a small thing. There's certainly bigger things. But, I'm not used to people scolding me like that on an airplane or anywhere. And, I'm dressed this way. He knows I'm not a ruthless person that he needs to hammer me because otherwise I'm not going to hear what he has to say. But in any case, he was who he was, and I benefited the way that I benefited. So when situations come that you don't really understand what's going on here, why is Krishna having this happen, it's a really good place that you hit the pause button. It's like detach yourself from the mind that's feeling whatever the mind is feeling and perceiving whatever it's perceiving and processing whatever it's processing and problem solving whatever it's problem solving and doing all the things that minds usually do. And step back and the Krishna centeredness of life, if you practice it and practice and practice, it becomes just the way that you live your life. So that's purity. So how do you enhance it was your question. Just to be able to see the kindness of Krishna behind all things. It's just by attachment to Krishna, and his nature is kind. And I may not understand it, and that's quite okay. Because in course of time, when it's time for me to understand, I'll understand. And it's easy to say, and it's another thing to live one's life that way, but your question was how to get closer to that position. And without purity, you're not going to get there. So what's the price for purity? It's just becoming attached to the bigger picture of what's life's mission, and being mindful of your mission as you're living your life. And then you add other descriptions to how do you do that? Everything rests upon the sound vibration, how we hear the mantra and chant the mantra and hear the scripture and assimilate the scripture. Shrinvanti gayanti grananti sadavaha. And you bring it inside and you live your life accordingly. And as you do that progressively, then you can start to see Krishna's kindness behind everything by the bhakti process, in short. With the intention, by taking up the bhakti process, is not just my problems in life should be solved, please, but let me become closer to Krishna. Let me become closer to Krishna. In this day or this time together. That's the lesson that we need. If not this lifetime, then however many lifetimes it takes till we learn the lesson. Better to learn it sooner than later. So the power of bhakti can take us to that place. It's someone else.
Hi, Krishna Guru Maharaj. We are reading in our Bhagavatam reading, we are reading Prahlad Maharaj's pastimes right now.
Which chapter?
8.
8.
Yeah. So the question came up that if like Narasimha Dev appeared and we saw in the slide that earth also vibrated and like the mountains moved, but the pastime happened in Indraloka or like in the heavenly planets. So
I'm listening. You want to know where it took place?
We couldn't understand how it happened, like how the earth moved. So that was a question came up.
The question was, he appeared on the heavenly planets, how was the earth moving? That's the question?
Yes.
Specifically?
Yes.
There's a premise that it took place on the heavenly planets, and I've spent some time in discussions with other learned devotees, and it's not really clear that he appeared in the heavenly planets. For example, Ahovalam. Ahovalam's not in the heavenly planets. Some years ago, many years ago, two sannyasis were traveling in South India and they visited Ahovalam. Yashodananda and Guru Kripa visited Ahovalam. And they asked Prabhupada, that says that this is the place where Lord Nrsimhadev appeared up on top of one of the hills. But Prabhupada, our understanding is he appeared in the heavenly planets, which is what your understanding is. And so, how is it possible that he appeared in Ahovalam? Now, I had a discussion with the Nrsimha Bhakta who practically ripped me apart after I said this, but I said it's just what Prabhupada said. He was like, rah, that's where he appeared. So, Prabhupada said that the transcendental emotion of Lord Nrsimhadev appeared in Ahovalam, it makes it non-different. That was the essence of his answer. So because for years and centuries and for longest periods of time they've been worshipping, this is the place, the pillar from which Lord Nrsimhadev appeared, and that's their bhakti. It's non-different. He didn't say it wasn't there. He didn't say it was there. He said it's not different. He didn't say it was in the heavenly planets either. So now, if he appeared on the heavenly planets, which is the presumption that you have, why there can't be disturbance anywhere in the universe? Because when he appeared, he was transcendentally angry. The whole universe could shake, what to speak of one part of the universe. And if he wants to, if he wants to appear on the heavenly planets and the earth can shake, no problem. Anger. And people feeling his anger. That's it. Another one.
So, like Narottam Das Thakur was like describing like how anger and
has its place in bhakti.
That's right. So I've always heard examples of anger, how it can be, used in bhakti, but haven't heard of any other like lust. I mean, no. Does Shastra say any other example?
I would recommend that you go through Narottam Das Thakur's writings on this, because I'm not going to, bypass your question. Just since it's something you have an interest in, go right to the source, because it's a often quoted, referred to section of transcendental teachings that all things have their place in bhakti life. So Kubja is an example. No, she was not feeling transcendental love. She was feeling lust. But she became purified by, the touch of the Supreme Lord to her toes and to her chin. And by his touch, she became purified. But you read that section because it's nice to know. It's a big distinction between mode of goodness sense of what's right and the transcendental sense of what's right.
Thank you, Guru Maharaj, about the example. I was thinking what could be the example. And
you have more? Keep going. You got more. Yes, no problem.
We heard that Lakshmi Devi was covered by Leela Shakti. So every time Narasimhadev appears and has Leela in previous yugas as well. So does the
same thing have a rerun?
Yeah, does Prahlad Maharaj also come and like?
It's not always one thing. This is my understanding. Exactly how in different cycles of the yugas, how does it play itself out? Is it the same? Doesn't play itself out the same. There's variety, and how that variety plays out, it's not specified. Maybe Lakshmi does come forward and offer prayers. Maybe so many maybes.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. I wanted to, one is a question and one is a kind of a comment. I was recently listening to a class about seeing Krishna everywhere.
Seeing Krishna everywhere.
So, what she said about seeing Krishna's mercy or kindness in different, whatever we do or whatever happens to us. And at the end of the class, the speaker was suggesting that maybe we can take some time at the end of every day and think of 3 things in which we actually thought of Krishna or we actually put Krishna, like Krishna was the reason. And the next day, I thought it was a very good idea to see, like, where we say, see Krishna everywhere, like light of the sun and the moon. So, and I remember I was drinking water in the morning, and I immediately, just thought came to me, thank you, Krishna, you are the taste of water, and you're giving me this nice water. And it was came spontaneously. It was not that I was thinking, oh, I have to make a note at the end of the day. And it actually really helped my consciousness, and it's been helping me, of course, every day. But to just kind of just pause in whatever we are doing, and of course, when things happen to us, that it is a really nice way to connect with Krishna and see his kindness, see his hand in everything. And recently in the morning when I go for Mangalarti, I do a little couple of, maybe 2 rounds of japa walk on the property. And at one particular place, there was some rustling in the grass. It happened once, and the next day again it happened, and I was so afraid. I could literally feel every hair on my body like standing up. I was thinking, see how I'm so afraid? We feel that, we are overcoming our fear of death, and I was feeling so afraid and I was actually going really fast, going up away, and I've avoided that place now for the last 2 days because I'm afraid. So this fear is there in us, and the fear is inherent, and it is. So my question is, how do we see that? How do we kind of, because we are now in the bodily platform, right? I'm trying to defend myself from something which might attack me. So it was a kind of a thoughtful. It was a moment to like pause and see, what should I do in this case?
I'm waiting for the punchline. It's all of what you're saying is very nice. Just repeat the punchline. Was it sharing? All of it is just sharing.
I was sharing, but then I just remembered about my walking by the area where I where I was fearful, and I was thinking, do I see Krishna in this moment?
You want to know your question? You're asking a question: how to overcome fear? That's what you're asking, or no? Just sharing.
I was sharing, but then I was also feeling that this fear is there, and even though we say we will. We are in the bodily concept of life then when we are feeling so fearful because of a small little thing which happened.
Okay.
So
what? What else is new?
What else is new? I guess at that point also we can say, I am seeing Krishna.
Vayam Dutwiyam. You know the verse? There's fear, syat, fear arises when there's bodily conception. Dvitiyam. This sense of duality, and this is me. I belong to this place of duality, and sometimes identifying with it, then fear arises. It's just the nature of the place. So, what's the solution? Give up the bodily conception. Great, thanks a lot, Maharaj. Okay, Roger. You do what you said at the beginning. That to build the spiritual conception, and little by little, little by little, little by little, little by little. And you keep, not just mechanical, but little by little, devotional therapy, like physical therapy, little by little, little by little. It's not mechanical; it's devotional. And as devotion arises, the bodily conception diminishes. You still have one, and you still deal with it, and you still detect this emotion and that perception and things like that. But you don't identify with it anymore. That's the detachment. It's still there, but you're detached from it. The heat and the cold, the duality, and the other things that are part of duality, you detect them, but you don't identify with it. And, the emotions in the mind, there's that emotion, I don't identify with it. It's just from spiritual cultivation. But it's genuine, it's not just a behavior. It's not just a behavior. It's a not just, it's not mechanical, it's devotional.
Gurumaj, can I ask a question now? Now the question I'm going to
Now
ask.
comes the question.
The
Okay.
question. This is different because when we're talking about Nrsingadev and we pray to Lord Nrsingadev to destroy the obstacles or remove the obstacles in our path of bhakti, and I personally I do pray, and and when I'm in front of Lord Nrsingadev, and I pray that with your nails please remove the anarthas in my heart, and then. But then we also hear that we should not pray to the Lord for anything for us. All we want is pure devotional service. And
Is there a way to make that prayer when it isn't about you? The answer is yes. Just, I'll let you do the editing. How to offer the same prayer where it's not you're at the center, but Lord Nrsingadev or the personality of Godhead is at the center.
So I've modified right now I pray to him and I say, destroyer of obstacles on the path of bhakti, to that Lord Nrsingadev I offer my prayers. I offer my respect.
Yeah, well,
He's the destroyer of the obstacles.
let's do it this way. Ganesh, in that particular verse that we referred to, he's mentioned in Brahma Samhita because in Karmakanda rituals, Ganesh is an essential personality in Karmakanda rituals. But where does Ganesh get the ability to remove obstacles for people for Karmakanda rituals? By the placement of the lotus feet of Lord Nrsingadev upon his head. So we just worship Lord Nrsingadev. We don't need to go separately to Ganesh. But when we go to Lord Nrsingadev, how does it not become, which is your question, how does it not become selfish or it's about me? It has everything to do with the purpose for which you want an obstacle removed. Or you can go the other direction, the Queen Kunti direction. Please bring the obstacles. Because by bringing the obstacles, my focus upon you becomes stronger. And when my focus upon you becomes stronger, you're there. Let the obstacles come. So it has everything to do with what's the mission or purpose of your day or your life, your activity. And offering prayers for removal of obstacles is just fine. Depends on what's the intention behind the obstacle removal. Is it so that my service can go on unimpeded, and having removal of obstacles for that purpose, unimpeded service? You may not need the obstacle to remove for unimpeded service. But let's step back and what was Prabhupada's prayer when he wanted to establish the temple in Juhu? And there was obstacles, big obstacles. I'll build you a temple. It was the focus was he made a promise and he wanted to fulfill that promise. And if there's obstacles, I'm going to need your help to address these obstacles. I'm your servant, and I'm going to build you a temple. And the obstacles, please take care of them. So, we have a mission in life, and there's obstacles, and mainly the obstacle is the mind. It's standing in the way of fulfilling the mission, being distracted by distractions. Yes. That was pretty strong and bold back there.
This is just a question that's always been on my mind. What happened to Prahlad Maharaj's mother after the entire pastime?
What happens to Prahlad Maharaj's mother?
Because she stayed at Narada Muni's ashram during the whole thing, so she must also be.
We don't hear much about her, do we? We know her name. Her name probably didn't change. But when Hiranyakashipu's gone, that's not, her protector is gone, but she's still, Kayadu. So what does she do? We don't hear about her. We can assume certain things that the Vaishnavas that were remaining saw to her needs. And as Prahlad became, old enough to look after his mother's needs, he looked after those were assumptions. Because ultimately, the personality of Godhead, Lord Nrsingadeva, is the protector of his devotee, and she was Prahlad's mother. So she must have gotten some protection simply from that angle of vision alone. But your question still remains. In what way was she protected? We don't hear that. I'm unaware of any description.
Thank you.
Before and after, after Hiranyakashipu's demise, what did Kayadu do? Under whose care was she placed? Someone. Upananda in the front.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. My question is on prayer also.
Prayer?
Yes. What's the significance of, or how important is a prayer that we usually say in the morning? Krishna, 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 hey. Krishna, 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 Raksha Mam. Please protect me, and Krishna, Krishna, Pai Mam, please maintain me. It sounds like it's me. It was for me. So.
Well, you have the answer. Who's me? That's, the prayer that Lord Chaitanya sang as he was leaving Puri, going south, asking for protection. It wasn't a self-centered, it was a Krishna conscious prayer. So, the protection means your bhakti is protected because the soul isn't going to be destroyed, but bhakti can be lost or covered or damaged. So that's the protection.
The other one.
Is that clear?
Yes.
Okay. Looks like that's it. One more. I think we'll call it a day.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, this isn't a question. I wanted to share something. I've been reading about with Sri Vrindavan, and we just finished the Mahaprakash Leela.
Mahaprakash Leela, isn't that nice?
Yeah, yes. And I just
Which part did you like the best?
I think this part at the end. Lord Chaitanya is speaking to Haridas Thakur, and he says to him that how he actually was, his intention was to kill the guards that were beating him in the marketplace, but he couldn't because Haridas was praying for them. So that's why he decided he would take the beating himself. And it just gave me chills thinking about that. He couldn't because of Haridas's prayers.
The part I like about the Mahaprakash Leela, the part I like the most, is Lord Chaitanya sending the devotees to go find Kolavich or Shridhar. That whole section. I mean, it's a dark of night, but you just follow the sound. You hear him chanting loudly, and they found him. They brought him. It's so nice. Okay, Srila Prabhupada ki Jai.